After my father's funeral, all I inherited was his old, ugly chair, while my sister got 2 cars and 3 houses. In a fit of rage, my husband slashed the upholstery with a knife and yelled, "I'm throwing you and this junk out." Mother-in-law added, "Finally someone's getting rid of that worthless furniture." A tiny bundle of papers fell from inside. And when I unwrapped it, I froze on the spot at what I saw. My name is Allison, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew exactly where I stood in my family. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. Dead wrong. Let me start from the beginning. My father, Frank, was a quiet man who worked as a mid-level accountant his entire life. Nothing flashy, nothing extraordinary. He lived in the same modest 2-bedroom house for 40 years, drove used cars until they died, and his idea of luxury was buying name-brand cereal instead of the store brand. My mother passed away when I was 12, and Dad raised my sister Jessica and me on his own. Jessica, who's 2 years older than me, was always Dad's golden child. She was the one who got the bigger bedroom, the newer clothes, the first car. She went to college on Dad's dime while I worked 3 jobs to put myself through community college. When she graduated, Dad helped her with a down payment on her first apartment. When I graduated, he gave me a card with $50 in it. I'm not bitter about it anymore. I wasn't then, either. That's just how it was in our family. Jessica was the success story, and I was the backup plan. Fast forward to 3 months ago. Dad had been sick for about a year with heart problems, but none of us thought it was that serious. He seemed to be managing it well with medication. Then one Tuesday morning, his neighbor found him collapsed in his garden. Massive heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. The funeral was small but nice. Dad didn't have many friends, but the people who came had genuine respect for him. Jessica flew in from California, where she'd been living in a beautiful house with her tech executive husband, Keith. She looked perfect as always, dressed in an expensive black dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My husband Eric and I sat in the second row while Jessica and Keith took the front. Eric squeezed my hand during the service, and I was grateful to have him there. We'd been married for 5 years, and while money was always tight, we were happy. Or at least, I thought we were. After the funeral, the lawyer, Mr. Peterson, asked us to stay behind for the reading of the will. I figured it would be quick and straightforward. Dad didn't have much, and I assumed it would all go to Jessica anyway. Mr. Peterson cleared his throat and opened the document. "The last will and testament of Frank William Kim," he began. "I should mention here that my married name is Morrison, but I was born Allison Kim. Dad was half Chinese, though he rarely talked about that side of his family. To my daughter Jessica Kim Williams, Mr. Peterson read, I leave my house at 1247 Maple Street, my 2018 Honda Civic, my 2015 Toyota Camry, and my investment property at 892 Oak Avenue, as well as the vacation cabin at Lake Serenity." Jessica's eyes lit up. The house was worth maybe $180,000, but the investment property and cabin were worth at least another $300,000 combined. Plus 2 relatively new cars. To my daughter Allison Kim Morrison, Mr. Peterson continued, and I held my breath, I leave my leather armchair from the living room, and all personal effects contained therein. The room went dead silent. That was it. A chair. An old, ugly, brown leather armchair that had been in Dad's living room for as long as I could remember. The thing was ancient, probably from the 1970s, with cracked leather and stuffing coming out of one of the arms. I'd always hated that chair because it smelled like old cigars and took up way too much space. Jessica tried to hide her smile, but I saw it. "I'm sure Dad had his reasons," she said in that fake sympathetic voice she'd perfected over the years. Eric was less diplomatic. "That's it?" he asked Mr. Peterson. "Just a chair?" "I'm afraid so," the lawyer replied. "The will is quite specific." I felt humiliated, but I tried to keep my composure. Maybe Dad had left something else for me separately. Maybe there was another document. There wasn't. We loaded the chair into Eric's pickup truck, and I tried not to cry as Jessica got the keys to 2 cars and 3 properties. She hugged me goodbye and promised to stay in touch, but we both knew that was unlikely. She'd gotten what she came for. The drive home was tense. Eric kept muttering under his breath about playing favorites and disrespectful bullshit. I just stared out the window and tried to process what had happened. When we got to our small apartment, Eric and his mother, Beverly, who had come over to help, started discussing what to do with the chair. Beverly had never liked me much, and she'd liked Dad even less. "It's hideous," Beverly declared, circling the chair like a vulture. "And it smells terrible. Why would anyone leave someone furniture that looks like this?" Because he never gave a damn about Allison, Eric said, his voice getting louder. Just like I figured. Her precious sister gets everything, and Allison gets garbage. I tried to defend Dad, but honestly, I was starting to wonder if Eric was right. Had Dad really thought so little of me? Over the next few weeks, the chair became a symbol of everything wrong with my life. Eric complained about it constantly. It was too big for our living room. It clashed with everything. It made the whole apartment look cheap. Get rid of it, he'd say every few days. Just take it to Goodwill or something. But I couldn't. It was the only thing Dad had left me. Even if it was ugly and smelled bad, it was mine. Eric's attitude toward me started changing around this time too. He'd always been supportive, but now he seemed resentful. He'd make comments about how I came from nothing and how he was carrying both of us financially. It hurt, but I figured he was just processing his own disappointment about the inheritance. Beverly, meanwhile, ramped up her campaign against the chair. Every time she visited, she'd wrinkle her nose and make comments. "It's bringing down the whole room," she'd say. "People are going to think you have no taste." "Maybe Allison should have worked harder to have a better relationship with her father," she said another time. "Then maybe she would have gotten something worthwhile." That comment made Eric laugh, which cut deeper than Beverly's words ever could. The breaking point came on a Friday evening about a month after the funeral. Eric had been drinking, which wasn't unusual, but he was angrier than normal. He'd had a bad day at work, his boss had passed him over for a promotion again, and he was looking for someone to blame. "This whole place is a dump," he said, gesturing around our small apartment. "And that chair is the worst part of it." "It's just a chair, Eric," I said quietly. "It's not just a chair," he yelled. "It's a reminder that your family thinks you're worthless. And you know what? Maybe they're right." I felt like he'd slap me. "Don't say that." "Why not? It's true, isn't it? Your sister gets cars and houses, and you get furniture that belongs in a dumpster. What does that tell you?" Beverly, who had been pretending to wash dishes in the kitchen, came into the living room. "Eric's right, honey. That chair is just taking up space. Maybe it's time to accept that your father didn't leave you anything valuable and move on." I stood up from the couch, my hands shaking. "It's the only thing I have left of him." Eric's face twisted with anger and something else, disgust, maybe. "You know what? I'm done with this. I'm done with you feeling sorry for yourself, and I'm done with this piece of crap taking up space in my apartment." Before I could react, he stormed into the kitchen and came back with a large knife. "Eric, what are you doing?" "I'm fixing this problem once and for all," he said, and before I could stop him, he raised the knife and brought it down hard into the chair's seat. "Stop!" I screamed, but he kept slashing. "I'm throwing you and this junk out," he yelled as he tore through the leather. "I'm sick of both of you." Beverly clapped her hands. "Finally. Someone's getting rid of that worthless furniture." I was crying now, trying to pull Eric away from the chair, but he was stronger than me. He kept stabbing and slashing until the upholstery was completely destroyed. Then something strange happened. As Eric pulled his knife out of a particularly deep cut in the back of the chair, a small bundle fell out onto the floor. It was wrapped in what looked like old brown paper and tied with string. We all stopped and stared at it. "What the hell is that?" Eric asked, lowering the knife. I bent down and picked up the bundle with shaking hands. It was heavier than I expected, and I could feel that there were multiple items inside. "Open it," Beverly said, suddenly interested. I untied the string carefully and unwrapped the brown paper. Inside was another layer of wrapping, this time in what looked like rice paper, very delicate and old. As I peeled back the rice paper, my heart stopped. Inside were documents. Old documents. But not just any documents. The first thing I saw was a deed. A property deed for 847 Cherry Blossom Lane in San Francisco. The property was listed as a 3-story Victorian house, and according to the deed, it had been in the Kim family since 1923. Under the deed were more papers. Stock certificates. A lot of them. Companies I recognized: Apple, Google, Microsoft, Tesla. Some were clearly very old, the paper yellowed with age. Others looked more recent. At the bottom of the bundle was a letter in Dad's handwriting, addressed to me. "Allison," I read aloud, my voice barely a whisper. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you finally found what I left for you. I'm sorry I had to hide it this way, but I needed to make sure it went to the right person." Eric and Beverly were both leaning over my shoulder now, reading along. "The house on Cherry Blossom Lane belonged to your great-grandfather, Kim Weiming. He was a businessman in San Francisco's Chinatown, and he was much more successful than anyone knew. When he died, the family fought over his estate, and eventually, most of them moved away or lost touch. Your grandmother inherited the house, but she never lived in it. She rented it out for decades. I kept reading, my hands shaking. I've been collecting rent on that house for over 20 years, Allison. It's in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in San Francisco now. The current tenants pay $8,500 per month, and the property is worth approximately $2.8 million according to the last appraisal. Beverly gasped. Eric grabbed the papers out of my hands. That's not possible, he said, scanning the documents. This has to be fake. But it wasn't fake. The deed was official, with stamps and seals. The stock certificates looked legitimate. And there was more. The stocks, Dad's letter continued, were purchased over many years. Some I bought when you were born, adding to them on every birthday and Christmas. Others belonged to your great-grandfather and grandmother. I never sold them because I wanted to leave them to someone who would appreciate their real value, not their immediate cash value. I grabbed the stock certificates from Eric and started looking through them. There were Apple stocks dated from 1995, Google from 2004, Tesla from 2010, Amazon from 1997. Allison, the letter went on, I know you think I love Jessica more, but that's not true. Jessica is like your mother, she's practical, ambitious, and she'll be fine no matter what. You're like me, you see value in things other people overlook, and you have a good heart. Jessica would have sold all of this immediately and spent the money on things that don't matter. You'll know what to do with it. At the bottom of the letter was contact information for a financial advisor in San Francisco and instructions for accessing a safety deposit box. There's more in the safety deposit box, Dad wrote. Including some jewelry that belonged to your great-great-grandmother. I love you, Allison. I always have. You just had to be patient enough to find what I really left you. The room was completely silent except for the sound of my heart pounding. Eric was the first to speak. This is worth millions, I whispered. This is worth millions of dollars. I looked up at Eric and Beverly, who were both staring at me with expressions I'd never seen before. Not love, not congratulations. Calculation. Well, Beverly said slowly, I guess we were wrong about that chair. Allison, honey, Eric said, his voice completely different now, I'm so sorry about what I said. I was just upset for you. You know I never meant any of it. But I wasn't listening to them anymore. I was thinking about Dad, and about the chair, and about what had just happened. Dad had left me something worth more than everything Jessica had inherited, combined. But he'd hidden it so well that only someone who truly cared about the chair, who wouldn't immediately throw it away or sell it, would ever find it. He'd been testing us. Testing me. And Eric had just failed spectacularly. I carefully rewrapped the documents and stood up. I need to make some phone calls, I said. Allison, wait, Eric said, reaching for my arm. We should talk about this. We should figure out what we're going to do with all this money. I looked at his hand on my arm, then at his face. We? Well, yeah. I mean, we're married. What's yours is mine, right? Beverly nodded enthusiastically. That's right, dear. Marriage is a partnership. I smiled at both of them. It wasn't a nice smile. You're absolutely right, Eric. Marriage is a partnership. So when you decided to destroy my inheritance with a knife while screaming that you were throwing me out, what kind of partnership was that? His face went red. Come on, Allison. I didn't know there was anything valuable in there. No, I said, you didn't. Because you didn't care enough to find out. You just wanted to hurt me. I walked to our bedroom and started packing a bag. Eric followed me, trying to apologize, trying to explain. Beverly hovered in the doorway, occasionally chiming in with suggestions about how we could invest the money. But I was done listening. I called my sister Jessica that night from a hotel room. Allison? She answered on the second ring. Is everything okay? I found something in Dad's chair, I said. I told her everything. About the documents, about the house, about the stocks. When I finished, there was a long silence. How much? She finally asked. Preliminary estimate from the financial advisor is about $4.2 million, plus whatever's in the safety deposit box. Another silence. Jesus, Allison. Dad was rich? Yeah, I said. He was. And he left it all to you? He left you the things you'd appreciate immediately. He left me the thing I'd have to work to understand. Jessica was quiet for a moment. That sounds like Dad, she said finally. I always thought he was just being weird with that chair. But he knew, didn't he? He knew I would have sold everything right away. Would you have? Probably, she admitted. I need the cash flow more than the long-term investments. The house and the rental property give me immediate equity and income. It was true. Jessica had 3 kids and a husband who traveled constantly for work. She needed liquid assets and steady income more than she needed a portfolio of stocks that might fluctuate. Allison, she said, I'm happy for you. I really am. And I'm sorry if you felt like Dad loved me more. He didn't. He loved us differently. After I hung up with Jessica, I called the financial advisor in San Francisco. His name was Mr. Wong, and he'd been managing the rental property for Dad for years. Ms. Morrison, he said, your father spoke about you often. He was very proud of you. He was? Oh yes. He said you were the one who would know what to do with his legacy. He was quite specific about that. Over the next few days, I learned the full scope of what Dad had left me. The house in San Francisco was indeed worth $2.8 million and was currently rented to a lovely family who wanted to buy it. The stocks were worth even more than I'd initially thought. Some of those early Apple and Google purchases had split multiple times over the years. The safety deposit box contained more stock certificates, some gold coins, and a collection of jade jewelry that had belonged to my great-great-grandmother. The jewelry alone was appraised at $180,000. All told, Dad had left me just over $5.3 million in assets. Meanwhile, Eric was calling me constantly, begging me to come home, promising he'd changed, swearing he'd never meant the things he'd said. Beverly called too. She wanted to help me manage my newfound wealth. I blocked both their numbers. Instead, I called a divorce attorney. I want to make sure my husband can't touch any of this money, I told her. When did you inherit it? She asked. After we were married, but it was left specifically to me in my father's will. That should help. In most states, inheritance is considered separate property as long as you don't commingle it with marital assets. When did your husband find out about it? I told her the whole story. So he destroyed the chair while threatening to throw you out, and only became interested in reconciliation after discovering the inheritance was valuable? That's right. She smiled grimly. I think we can work with that. The divorce took 3 months to finalize, and those 3 months were absolute hell. Eric fought it at first, claiming he deserved half of everything because we were married. But I had documentation of everything, the threatening behavior, the destruction of property, witnesses to his statements about throwing me out. What I didn't expect was how vicious he would become once he realized I was serious about leaving him. The first sign came when I went back to the apartment to collect more of my belongings. I'd arranged to go when Eric was at work, but he'd taken the day off without telling me. When I walked in with my friend Maria for support, Eric was sitting in the living room with the destroyed chair still there, stuffing scattered everywhere. So you're really doing this, he said without looking up. Yes, I am. You know, Allison, I've been thinking about our marriage, and I realized something. His voice was calm, which was somehow more frightening than when he yelled. You were never that great of a wife to begin with. Maria stepped closer to me. Eric, don't. No, she should hear this, Eric continued, finally looking at me. You're boring, Allison. You never wanted to go out, never wanted to try new things. All you ever did was work and come home and watch TV. Do you know how many times I thought about leaving you before this inheritance thing happened? I felt like he'd punched me in the stomach, but I kept my voice steady. Then you should be happy I'm making it easy for you. Oh, I am. But I want you to know something else. He stood up and walked closer to me. I've been talking to some people, and they think there might be ways to challenge your claim to that money. Inheritance laws are complicated, Allison. And you're not as smart as you think you are. Is that a threat? Eric smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It's just information. That night, my lawyer called. Allison, I need to tell you something. Eric's hired a very expensive attorney. Someone who specializes in contesting inheritances. My blood ran cold. Can he do that? He can try. The fact that you're married complicates things, even though the inheritance is in your name only. His lawyer is going to argue that your father intended for the money to benefit the family, including Eric. That's ridiculous. Dad barely tolerated Eric. I know, but we need to be prepared. Do you have any evidence of your father's feelings toward Eric? I thought about it. Actually, Yes. I have emails. Over the next few days, I went through years of correspondence with Dad. What I found was damning for Eric's case. Email after email where Dad expressed concern about my marriage. Eric seems to take you for granted, Dad had written in one email from 2 years earlier. A good husband should build you up, not tear you down. In another, I worry that Eric doesn't appreciate the woman he married. You deserve someone who sees your worth, Allison. And most damning of all, from just 6 months before Dad died, if anything ever happens to me, I want you to know that you're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone convince you that you need them more than they need you. My lawyer was thrilled. This establishes a pattern of your father's concern about Eric's treatment of you. It supports the argument that your father would never have intended for Eric to benefit from your inheritance. But Eric's legal challenge wasn't the only problem I was facing. Word had gotten out somehow about my inheritance, and suddenly I was everyone's best friend. My phone started ringing constantly. Distant relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to catch up. Old friends from high school reached out to congratulate me and hint about investment opportunities or business ventures. The worst was my cousin Tommy, Dad's nephew, who showed up at my hotel room one evening uninvited. "Allison," he said when I opened the door, as if we were close friends instead of people who saw each other maybe once every 5 years at family gatherings. "I heard about Uncle Frank's gift to you. That's amazing. Tommy, how did you even find out where I was staying?" "Oh, you know how family news travels. Listen, I was hoping we could talk. I have this amazing business opportunity, and with your new resources, I thought maybe." I closed the door in his face. But Tommy was persistent. He started calling me every day, then showing up at the hotel lobby. Finally, I had to have hotel security escort him out and put him on a list of people who weren't allowed to contact me. The harassment got worse when someone leaked the story to the local newspaper. The headline read, "Local woman inherits millions hidden in old chair." The article didn't use my name, but in a small town, everyone knew who it was talking about. Suddenly, I was getting letters from complete strangers asking for money. People claiming to be distant relatives. Investment advisors, real estate agents, and financial planners calling at all hours. Someone even started a rumor that I was looking to buy a new car, and 3 different dealerships called me in one day. I had to change my phone number twice. The stress was starting to affect my health. I wasn't sleeping well, I lost my appetite, and I was constantly looking over my shoulder. Maria, my friend who'd been helping me through everything, was worried. "Allison, you look terrible," she said when she came to visit me at the hotel. "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" "I don't know. Yesterday? The day before? This isn't sustainable. You need to get out of town until the divorce is final and the legal stuff is settled." She was right, but I was afraid that leaving would make me look guilty of something, or give Eric's lawyers ammunition to use against me. What if they say I'm hiding assets or running away? What if you have a nervous breakdown and can't fight them at all? Maria countered. "Allison, your health is more important than any legal strategy." That's when Mr. Wong, the financial advisor in San Francisco, called with a suggestion. "Ms. Morrison, I understand you're having some difficulties with unwanted attention regarding your inheritance. If you'd like, you could come to San Francisco for a few weeks while we work on organizing your portfolio. It would give you some distance from the situation, and we could handle the practical aspects of your inheritance in person." It seemed like a sign. I booked a flight to San Francisco the next day. The change of scenery was exactly what I needed. Mr. Wong's office was in a beautiful building in the financial district, and he treated me with respect and professionalism that I hadn't experienced since this whole thing began. He never made me feel stupid for not understanding financial terms, and he never acted like my money was his ticket to getting rich. "Your father was a very smart man," Mr. Wong told me during our first meeting. "He understood the importance of long-term thinking. These stock purchases weren't accidents or lucky guesses. He researched every single company, watched key trends, and made strategic decisions over decades. I never knew he was interested in investing. He didn't talk about it because he didn't want people to treat him differently. But he spent hours every week studying financial reports and key analysis. He always said his greatest fear was leaving his daughters unprepared for the world." While I was in San Francisco, I also got to see the rental property that Dad had left me. It was a stunning Victorian house in the Mission District, painted in cheerful yellow and blue. The tenants, a family with 2 young children, invited me in for coffee and told me stories about the neighborhood. "We've been hoping to buy this house for years," the wife, Carmen, told me. "Your father always said he'd give us first option if he ever decided to sell. We're still interested, if you're willing. I looked around the house, at the original hardwood floors, the beautiful moldings, the garden where their children's toys were scattered on the grass. This was a home, not just an investment property. Let me think about it, I told Carmen. I want to make sure I'm making the right decision. That evening, I called Jessica. The tenants want to buy Dad's rental house, I told her. What are you thinking? I'm thinking I should sell it to them. The money would be more useful to me than the rental income, and they clearly love the house. Jessica was quiet for a moment. That sounds like something Dad would have wanted. He always preferred dealing with families rather than investors. Yeah, I think so too. Allison, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you okay? I mean, really okay? I know this whole thing with Eric has been awful, and now you're dealing with all this money stress on top of it. I realized it was the first time anyone had asked me how I was feeling rather than what I was planning to do with the money. I'm scared, I admitted. I keep waiting for someone to tell me this is all a mistake, or for Eric's lawyers to find some loophole that gives him half of everything. And I'm lonely. I thought I had a partner for life, and it turns out I was married to someone who only cared about me when he thought I had something valuable to offer. Eric's an idiot, and you're better off without him. But I know that doesn't make it hurt less. The weird part is, I'm not even sure I'm sad about losing Eric. I'm more sad about losing the idea of Eric, you know? The person I thought he was. That makes perfect sense, Jessica said. Grief isn't just about death. Sometimes it's about realizing that something you believed in never really existed. After I hung up with Jessica, I sat in my hotel room overlooking San Francisco Bay and tried to imagine what my life would look like a year from now. For the first time since Dad died, I felt hopeful instead of overwhelmed. The legal fight with Eric continued for another month, but my evidence was too strong for his case to succeed. The emails from Dad, combined with witness testimony about Eric's behavior on the night he destroyed the chair, painted a clear picture of a man who had shown no respect for me or my inheritance until he learned it was valuable. The final hearing was almost anticlimactic. Eric's expensive lawyer tried to argue that marriage created a presumption of shared assets, but my lawyer countered with evidence of Dad's specific intentions and Eric's abandonment of the marriage relationship. In the end, he got nothing. Not even alimony, because I was able to prove he'd been planning to leave me anyway. Beverly tried to contest the settlement, claiming I owed Eric something for supporting me during our marriage. The judge was not sympathetic. Mrs. Morrison, the judge said to Beverly, your son destroyed property belonging to the defendant while verbally abusing her and threatening to evict her from their shared home. The court finds no basis for any claim of spousal support under these circumstances. Beverly's face turned red and she started to argue, but the judge cut her off. Furthermore, I would advise you to cease any further harassment of Ms. Kim, as it could result in a restraining order. Eric looked like he'd aged 10 years during the 3 months of legal proceedings. As we left the courthouse, he tried one last time to talk to me. Allison, wait. I stopped and turned around, but I didn't say anything. I know I messed up, he said. I know I said things I shouldn't have said. But we were good together once, weren't we? Before all this money stuff happened? I looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to remember when we had been good together. But all I could think of were the subtle put-downs, the times he dismissed my opinions, the way he'd made me feel small and grateful for whatever scraps of affection he threw my way. No, Eric, I said finally. We were never good together. I was just too insecure to realize it. I walked away from him then, and I never looked back. With the divorce finalized and my inheritance secured, I had some decisions to make. The financial advisor recommended keeping some of the stocks long-term and selling others to diversify. I sold about half, which gave me roughly $2.6 million in liquid assets. I used some of that money to buy a beautiful house in the same neighborhood where I grew up, not far from where Dad had lived, actually. It has a big garden where I'm growing vegetables, just like he used to. I kept Dad's chair, too. I had it professionally restored, and now it sits in my home office. Sometimes I sit in it when I'm making important decisions, and I swear I can feel Dad there with me, proud of what I've done. The rental house in San Francisco is still generating income, about $8,500 per month, just like Dad said. The tenants are wonderful people, and I gave them first option to buy when they're ready. I also started a small investment firm that focuses on helping working-class families plan for their financial futures. It's not making huge profits yet, but it's growing, and I love the work. I think Dad would approve. As for Eric and Beverly, I heard through mutual friends that Eric remarried within a year. His new wife is apparently very wealthy, which I'm sure is just a coincidence. Beverly still tells people that I stole money that should have belonged to Eric. I don't really care what Beverly thinks anymore. Jessica and I have gotten closer since all this happened. She visits me when she's in town, and we talk on the phone regularly. She's managing her properties well and seems genuinely happy with what Dad left her. He really did know us, didn't he? She said during her last visit. I needed the immediate stability, and you needed the long-term security. She's right. Dad understood both of his daughters better than we understood ourselves. The most satisfying part of this whole story, though, happened about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. I was at the grocery store when I ran into Eric and his new wife. She was exactly what you'd expect, blonde, polished, expensive-looking. Eric looked uncomfortable when he saw me, but he came over anyway. "Allison," he said, "you look good." I was wearing jeans and a sweater, nothing special. But I felt good. Better than I had in years. "Thanks," I said. His wife was staring at me with undisguised curiosity. I could tell Eric had told her about the inheritance. "This is my ex-wife," Eric told her. Then to me, "Allison, this is Amanda." Amanda smiled in that fake way rich people sometimes do. "Oh, you're the one with the chair," she said. I almost laughed. Of course that's how he described me. The woman with the worthless chair. "That's right," I said. "The chair." Eric's face turned red. "Amanda, we should go." But Amanda was looking at my wedding ring, a beautiful vintage piece I'd found at an estate sale, and my car keys. I was driving a new BMW, nothing flashy, but definitely not the old Honda I'd had when Eric and I were married. "That's a beautiful ring," she said slowly. "Thank you," I said. "My great-great-grandmother's jade." I could see the wheels turning in Amanda's head. She was starting to realize that maybe the chair story wasn't quite complete. "Eric," she said, "didn't you tell me that Allison—" "We really need to go," Eric interrupted. "Nice seeing you, Allison." As they walked away, I heard Amanda asking questions. Eric was trying to deflect, but she was persistent. I paid for my groceries and went home to my beautiful house, where Dad's restored chair was waiting in the study, and where I keep his letter framed on the wall. The right person, I read aloud sometimes, will know what to do with it. He was right. I didn't know what to do with it. I knew how to wait for what was really mine. I knew how to see value where others saw junk. And I knew how to walk away from people who didn't see my worth. Dad taught me all of that, even after he was gone. The chair isn't ugly anymore. It's beautiful, because it's mine, and because it came from love, not obligation. And sometimes, late at night when I'm working in my office, I swear I can smell just a hint of those old cigars, and I know Dad's still there, still proud of his daughter who learned to look deeper than the surface. That's my story. It's not just about revenge, although there was some satisfaction in watching Eric realize what he'd thrown away. It's about understanding that sometimes the most valuable gifts come in the most unexpected packages. And sometimes, the people who truly love us know exactly what we need, even when we don't know it ourselves. Update: a few people have asked about Beverly. She actually reached out to me about a year after the divorce, asking if I could help out Eric because he was having financial problems. Apparently, his marriage to Amanda didn't work out. Shocking, I know, and he's been struggling since then. I told Beverly that Eric was no longer my responsibility and suggested she help him herself if she was so concerned. She hasn't contacted me since. As for the investment firm, it's doing better than I ever imagined. We've helped over 200 families start building wealth, and I've been invited to speak at several financial literacy conferences. I always start my presentations the same way: sometimes the most valuable things in life come disguised as junk. The trick is knowing how to look. Dad would be proud.